open space, the final frontier. These are the explorations of scientists, sociologists, and AI technologists at Maynooth University. Our mission: to create autonomous drones, air traffic flight management, and seek out new solutions for our civilization. To boldly go where no drone has gone before. Experienced knowledge set free at our open days, November 23rd and 24th.
Maynooth University. No bounds.
Welcome back into the Sportsmemo, College Football Every Game on the Board podcast with our next guest, Brent Crow. Brent Crow, welcome to the podcast. How are you, bud?
Hey, Drew. Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I think this is our first podcast on together, so excited to get your opinion on some of these games. We're going 369 down to game number 400 on the Sportsmemo odds screen if you want to follow along. But Brent, let's start off 369, 370. Georgia State at App State. Looks like 54 the total, with Appalachian State laying 4 touchdowns now at home in Boone.
Yeah, Appalachian State's having a good year, 7-2, 5-1 in conference play, and for Georgia State, not so much. They're just 2-8 with a 1-5 mark in conference, and I mean, they've been a little competitive. They've been able to score. Their defense has been horrible, but I don't really get involved with a lot of Sun Belt games, and especially with big favorites. I would probably lean to taking the points here, just a little bit, but this was not one of the better games on the card for me.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think we got another one here with UTSA at Marshall, 44.5 the total, with Marshall laying pretty much the same number, 27 at home. I mean, you don't see 27 laying 27 with a 44.5 total, but we know what that means. Any opinion on this one?
Yeah, it means UTSA doesn't score. In conference play, 6 games, they've put up a whopping 80 points. So they're averaging about 13 points a game. Marshall defensively has played pretty well this year, and the situation is there's really no advantage. I mean, Marshall's got FIU next week. Obviously, they became bowl eligible last week, but I don't think that's going to provoke a letdown here. So, they'd open 23 up to 27.5. I would agree with the move here.
All right, a little bit better one here, Brent. We head out to the Pac-12, Stanford at Cal. Looks like the Cardinal laying 2 on the road, 45 the total in this rivalry game.
Yeah, big rivalry game here. And, Cal this year has just been so confounding to me. I mean, they got off to a great start, 3-0. They dropped 3 in a row and scored 7 points at home against UCLA. And if their quarterback situation has just been up and down all year, and then all of a sudden they've won 3 of their last 4, including a road win against USC last week. And I still really am not sure what to make of Cal. Stanford has been disappointing. I had Stanford a couple weeks ago. I thought they were in a great spot. They were playing at Washington State. Washington State was coming off a big win, and Stanford couldn't stop them. Gave up 41 points on the road, and they came back. I actually came back and bet Stanford again the next week at Washington. They got down early, but then covered that number, and then they had the 48-17 win against Oregon State last week. And I have a little more confidence in Stanford than I do Cal here. Of course, with the rivalry situation, a lot of rivalry games, you really don't know what's going to happen. But I would lean a little bit to Stanford here. I think I got more confidence in them on offense than I do Cal.
Staying in the Pac-12, Brent, we got Arizona State at Oregon. Looks like 64 the total, with the Ducks laying 3.5 in Eugene.
Yeah, Arizona State's had a nice little run here. Herm Edwards getting the job done. 3 straight wins. They beat UCLA last week. They had a nice win over Utah, one on the road against USC. But to me, I like Oregon in this one. Oregon at home has historically been, they've been dominant at home for the most part. And obviously, this is not the same program it was 5 or 6 years ago. But they're coming off. They had a nice win against Washington. And then since then, they've dropped 3 out of 4, including a blowout at Arizona. Lose on the road against Utah last week. But I think at home here, they get the job done. And I thought the price was a little cheap at 3.5.
We also got Arizona and Washington State in the Pac-12, 62.5 the total, with the Cougs laying 10 in Pullman.
Yeah, the Cougars, I think was last week, 2 weeks ago, against Cal was the only game they've played all year. They have not covered the number, 9-1 against the spread. And they've been surprising. Usually you can count on Mike Leach's team to screw up a time or two during the season, but I don't know if the Pac-12 is just so watered down this year or what. But Washington State clearly has been the best team, and like I said, if you bet Washington State, you've had a pretty solid year backing them so far. Against Arizona, I don't want to get in front of Washington State here. Arizona has been kind of up and down, but again, I thought the price, despite what's funny is despite Washington State being number 8 in the country, covering 9 out of 10 games, I actually thought the price was a little cheap the last couple of weeks, and again this week, laying only 10.5 against Arizona at home.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that number is short as well. And guys, we do have a coupon code for the podcast. It's CROWHALF. That's Brent Crow's last name, CROWHALF. No spaces in there, and you can get half off Brent Crow's 30-day all-access package at sportsmemo.com. And keep in mind, Brent Crow, he does college football, knows it well, but his best sport, which just started, is college basketball. We're also doing a podcast here shortly going over some games for tonight, but college basketball, he's a great handicapper, up 25 units last year, so you can get both sports next 30 days for half off using the coupon code CROWHALF at checkout. We got Nevada, San Jose State, Brent. 14.5, Nevada laying on the road, 59 the total.
Yeah, I don't want any part of San Jose State. They lose to Utah State 62-24 last week, 1-9 for the season now. And, for the most part, they have not been competitive. Nevada, it's been, I guess, a surprise season a little bit for Nevada. And, they're a game back of Fresno in their division. And coming off 3 straight wins, I think Nevada's the only way you can play this one.
We got TCU Baylor in the Big 12 here. We got 52 the total, with the Baylor Bears laying 2 at home.
Yeah, what a disappointing season TCU has had. And if you watch them play, you understand why. I mean, their offense is horrible. I think they've had it's the worst quarterback situation that they've had in a long time. And you just look, they scored less than 20 points a game in conference play. It's been definitely a rough year for Gary Patterson and TCU. And Baylor. And Baylor's 3-4 in conference play, 5-5 for the year. Nothing special, but they've had a couple of decent outings lately. They win at home against Oklahoma State a couple weeks ago. I actually had them in that game, and I would lean Baylor here, but I think the under may be the better play. I mean, both teams' offense is not very dynamic, and you're looking at 52. So if I play it, I play the under.
Yeah, I like your analysis there on the TCU quarterback situation. When their first kid, he was kind of injured. I like betting against TCU just because I don't think the market was onto it, but now it seems to be. We got Tulsa, Navy. Brent, Navy held tough against UCF. I actually took the loss. I bet personally UCF minus the points, and in the second half, Navy didn't quit, so you got to give them credit. But in this one, we're seeing 52, and now they're laying 6s pretty much across the board at home.
Yeah, it's been a rough year for Navy. And, Navy has been a pretty consistent program over the years. And, for whatever reason, this year they've had some injuries, and it's just been a tough year, especially offensively. And you just wondered last week. I mean, they did play tough against UCF. It was kind of, they're 2-7 going into that game. Here's their big opportunity. They wind up and come up short. Now they're at home laying almost a touchdown to another team that has really struggled. Tulsa is also 2-8, and I have a hard time laying 6 with a 2-8 team this late in the year. If I had an opinion, it would definitely be with Tulsa.
Brent, one of the most surprising, maybe the most surprising team in the nation, we got UAB, the Blazers. That's Alabama Birmingham to the common folk, and Texas A&M at home. Texas A&M's laying 17, 45.5 the total. You think the Blazers got a chance to cover this?
The way they've played, I mean, obviously the competition has not been very strong. I mean, they're playing in the Sun Belt and definitely not SEC caliber. But, I mean, you got to give Bill Clark credit. I mean, this team, this is the second year they've played after they shut the program down. Of course, I'm right here close to Birmingham, and there was no interest until they shut it down. Then everybody said, no, you can't shut down the football program. So they started it back up. And Bill Clark did a smart thing. He actually saw an interview with him yesterday, and he talked about, instead of starting over with all freshmen, he said, I looked at teams that that had done that, and it took 4 or 5 years to get back. He did everything he could to convince his players to just stick around. They didn't play for the 1 year, but and most of them did. I mean, he had a few transferred, but this is not a team. Even though they are only playing for their second year after the program was shut down, it's not a young team. So, but their defense has been phenomenal. 3 shutouts this year. And again, the competition's not that great, but I give them a shot against Texas A&M to keep it close. A&M's nothing special. They've had an up and down year under Jimbo Fisher, and at 17, obviously the total's 45. It's expected to be a low scoring game. If UAB can hang in the trenches and just keep Texas A&M from running all over them, I think it'll be a close game. I think UAB probably has a little trouble scoring here, so that UAB's best bet is for this one to be a 13-10 game. Texas A&M not very interested since it is a non-conference team, but I have a feeling that 9-1 record may get some attention for the Aggies too, though.
SEC West matchup up next. We got Arkansas traveling to Starkville to take on Mississippi State. Brent, 46.5 the total, with Mississippi State laying 3 touchdowns plus the hook, 21.5 at home. Well,
if you had LSU last week, Arkansas is not your favorite team this week, and I had LSU laying 13.5. Man, talk about a tough one on Saturday night. And now you've got Mississippi State. We talked about who scored 80 points in conference play. Mississippi State scored 67 points in 6 SEC games. This offense is it just hasn't worked. And they had Fitzgerald coming back. They had their best running back coming back. He even was not starting because supposedly had somebody better. But Joe Moorhead came in, and he's been an offensive guru. But it just hasn't worked this year for whatever reason. Mississippi State has not been able to score points in conference play. And when they face Louisiana Tech and some of the other non-conference opponents, they've scored some points. Lafayette and Stephen F. Austin. But conference games has been a complete struggle. And now they're coming off the game against Alabama, where their defense, I thought, played pretty well. Alabama only scored 24 points. Of course, the quarterback for Alabama got hurt in the game. But, my question here is, how do you lay 21.5 with a team that has just had so much trouble scoring? Now granted, Arkansas's defense is not one of the better ones in the conference, but again, 21.5 with this offense, hard for me to do. I'm more interested in playing it under 46.5, because the one thing about Mississippi State, their defense has held up. Even though the offense has put them in horrible positions and struggled all year, their defense has done a great job, and I think it'll be tough for Arkansas to score here.
Brent, we head to the Big 12 with a lot different total anyway. West Virginia at Oklahoma State, 4.5. The Mountaineers are laying in Stillwater, 73.5 the total.
Yeah, you got a completely different dynamic here. You're going to have some offense, no question about it. Oklahoma State, they've been up and down this year, mostly down. But they have shown that they are capable of scoring. They had a big effort against Texas the other day. West Virginia, we looked at this game last night. Teddy and I were talking, and West Virginia on the road, I just don't trust them to lay points here, especially knowing they got to go. They got a huge game next week at home against Oklahoma. I think that West Virginia could be ripe for an upset here. The last time they were on the road, they beat Texas on the last play of the game, 42-41. Their other road games this year have not been impressive. They lose to Iowa State, and they had a game against Texas Tech where they score on an interception return to get that victory. So, Oklahoma State's shown that they're capable. They put up 47 points against Oklahoma, beat Texas, and again, might be a good spot to take Okie State here.
Talking about good defense in the game prior, we have another one here with Louisiana Tech. Their defensive front is pretty strong. They're laying 1 on the road at Southern Mississippi, 47 the total, Brent.
Yeah, Louisiana Tech has traditionally had a pretty good program, and no difference this year, especially in conference play. They stepped outside of conference play, lose to Mississippi State a couple weeks ago, lose to LSU early in the season. Southern Miss looks like they're turning their program around after some really rough years Southern Miss the last couple of years has picked it up a little bit, and they're sitting at 4-5 right now. Big game for Southern Miss to get to 500, and then maybe a win in their one of their next two games gets them bowl eligible. But I would lean a little bit to Southern Miss here, but not a real strong opinion.
Brent, we got Bowling Green at Akron in the MAC, 49.5 the total. Akron, I don't know how, but the Zips are laying a touchdown here. I don't know if I want to lay 7 with Akron to anybody. How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, again, a team that has really struggled on offense. They've only scored 97 points in 6 conference games. And like you said, here we go. They're laying a touchdown. Bowling Green's only 1-5 in conference play. I mean, you got 2 bad teams, no doubt about it. I just have a hard time laying a touchdown with somebody that is not going to score very much and that has been had a pretty rough season.
Another interesting handicap. Interesting is probably the wrong word. I'd say a handicap that I don't do a lot. It's LSU laying 41.5 at home to Rice, 52 the total. Have at it, Brent.
Well, LSU is going to win the game and win it fairly easily. It's just going to be how interested are they in blowing out Rice. I mean, LSU, a lot of SEC, basically all the powerhouse teams in the SEC this week are playing basically cupcake games before their season-ending game with their rivals. LSU no different. They had LSU had a pretty decent effort against Arkansas last week until the fourth quarter. It was 24-3 going in the fourth quarter. And we've seen them, when they've faced poor teams this year, they haven't really run the score up. Against Southeastern Louisiana, it was 31-0. Against Louisiana Tech, 38-21. So, they're not that explosive offensively. They're more of a grinded-out type of team. I wouldn't expect Rice to score, but tough for me to lay 42 with Rice, and I would think the game probably goes under the total. Rice is not going to score more than a touchdown if they get that. So I would lean a little bit under here as well.
Guys, we got 2 games left, and then we're going to do a special college basketball podcast with Brent as well. He's a college basketball handicapping specialist here with Sportsmemo.com, and also remember his coupon code CROW1/2 at checkout to get half off his 30-day all access at Sportsmemo.com. That's a great deal. Save a lot of money for the next month, and you get a lot of sports with that as well. So 2 sports that he excels in is college football and especially college basketball. So look out for the podcast coming up next as well. But Brent, heading into the SEC, we got Mississippi Vanderbilt cross-division matchup here, 67.5 the total, with Vandy laying 3 in Nashville.
Yeah, Vandy laying 3 with 67. Guess who the second highest scoring team in the SEC is, Drew?
Ole Miss.
The Ole Miss Rebels. They've scored more than anybody other than Alabama. The problem is they've given up, 93 more. I'm sorry. Well, 93 more points than anybody other than Arkansas. They're clearly the worst defense. I mean, and they give up big plays. I mean, they have not improved from day one on defense. And then, as a result, you've had a lot of high-scoring games. Though, Miss, I think you're going to have another one here. Vanderbilt actually has moved the ball fairly well at times this year. Kyle Sharmer's had a pretty decent season. They've got a couple weapons at running back and wide receiver. And, with Ole Miss, I mean, you just expect a high-scoring game, and I don't think this one's going to be anything different than that. I have trouble laying points with Vanderbilt, but with that Ole Miss defense, it's hard to take them. I think the best play is the over.
This is an interesting one here, Brent, to ended this segment. We'll be back with Robbie Vino to finish up the college football Every Game on the Board podcast, and also doing a podcast with Brent on college basketball only. But we got Boston College at Florida State here. They're laying 1.5, 49 the total. I mean, I guess you could say the Seminoles are at home in Tallahassee, but I really want no part of betting this team, Brent. I don't know how you feel about them, but how would you look to bet Boston College, Florida State?
Well, you've got an injury at Boston College quarterback position. He was listed day-to-day earlier in the week. We'll see if he plays. But, man, Florida State, they've just been horrible on defense, and you would never expect that from this program. I mean, they always have athletes, they always have size. You'd expect their defense to always be pretty decent. I mean, yes, they've had some trouble At the quarterback position the last few years, but defensively they've always been decent. But you look at their last three games: Notre Dame, NC State, Clemson. They gave up 42, 47, and 59 points. After the Clemson loss, Taggart said basically that we were going to do a lot of. They basically called them quitters. And, anytime in football when the coach says, yeah, we quit, we're going to make some change. If you don't want to play, then we'll find somebody else. And usually you'll see a little better effort, but that hasn't been the case. I mean, they've given 89 points in the 2 games since then. So I want absolutely no part of Florida State. Boston College, they've struggled a little bit lately as the schedule's gotten tougher, but I think even if quarterback doesn't play here, I mean, they still should be able to move the ball on the ground against Florida State, and their defense is not too bad either. They held Clemson to 27 last week, and clearly Boston College is a better team. I mean, this Florida State, the name on the jersey here probably gets you, instead of laying 1.5 or instead of laying 4.5 or 5 with Boston College, you're only laying 1.5 just because it still says Florida State. But this is not the same Florida State program you're used to seeing.
Yeah, might be value in that side for sure. Brent, we'll be right back. We're going to be doing a college basketball here podcast, so we'll end this one. We'll have Robbie Vino up next in the college football Every Game on the Board podcast. And guys, remember the coupon code CROW half at checkout for half off Brent Crow's 30-day all access. We'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in.
Open space, the final frontier. These are the explorations of scientists, sociologists, and AI technologists at Maynooth University. Our mission: to create autonomous drones, air traffic flight management, and seek out new solutions for our civilization. To boldly go where no drone has gone before. Experienced knowledge set free at our open days, November 23rd and 24th.
Maynooth University. No bounds.